was at first.
Yeah, he
He's
said.
like, I see that guy everywhere.
Yeah, that's kind of what he said. He's like, oh, but he's such a nice young
I think I kind of startled him.
All right, calling to order the October 14th, 2019 Chaska Parks Board meeting. Mary, roll call.
Chair David Rowan,
Here.
Dave Downs,
Here.
Ernesto Ruiz Gutierrez,
Here.
Joshua Ives, Lauren Mahalo, Patricia Whitrock,
Here.
Sean Olson, Vice Chair Jason Branch,
Here.
Vincent Kim,
Here.
Matt Ruderman,
Here.
Elizabeth Clark.
Here.
All right, moving on to item number 3, adopt agenda. Anybody have any additions or corrections to the agenda as it currently sits? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved. Second.
All right, Ruderman and Downs, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, same. Motion carries. Item number 3, visitor presentation. Seeing we have no visitors, we are going to go ahead and close the visitor presentation here at 7:04 and move on to item number 5, which is to approve previous meeting minutes. And that takes us back to August, since we did not have a meeting last month. And were there any questions, comments, corrections from your review of the August 12th minutes? Hearing none, again, a motion to accept meeting minutes.
I so move.
Okay, Commissioner Whitrock, second.
Second.
From Commissioner Grants, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, so that takes us down to old business, which is item number 6. And that starts us with the bike-friendly update. And Director Grange.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. So got a few updates for you tonight. Just want to make sure you're staying up to date with some progress being made in the realm of bike-friendly community initiative we have going on here at Chaska, and just get any feedback or questions you may have. So start off by showcasing a field trip we recently went on as staff. You can see we took the Chaska Park and Recreation bus, and several of us went on a good hour-and-a-half trip over to Wilmer, Minnesota a few weeks ago. And we really wanted to do that because Wilmer has actually achieved this bicycle-friendly community designation about 4 years ago. And they're actually looking to resubmit their application and try to go from a bronze level to a silver level designation. And so I had made a connection with one of their school district community education staff who's worked on that initiative since the beginning and was able to coordinate a field trip for us to go out and meet with them along with several other key people at their city that's been a part of their bicycle-friendly initiative. So it was a good day. We had fun. It was going out on a field trip. I got to play bus driver for the day that day. I think I got labeled as Uncle Eddie along the way somehow. But we gleaned some good information visiting with their staff. And, I think the key takeaways that I took from it were, one was the fact that they had a bicycle and pedestrian master plan that they had worked on back in 2011. And that was a key guiding document for them as they started out some of their bicycle-friendly community initiative back in 2014. So I think that might be something we want to look at here as we venture into this, is working with a local consultant to develop an actual master plan and what that could look like for us in terms
Order
of
the July 8, 2019 Chaska.
people walking and biking within our community. Another interesting thing there they did was kind of a grassroots bike share program. They utilized a lot of bikes that were misplaced or stolen or whatever the case may be, and they worked with people in the community that could fix them up. I think they painted them bright yellow, and they had several spots where they parked them, but the concept was anybody was free to just use them and ideally return them. Some of the feedback was that those bikes didn't always get returned. They did have some challenges with that. I think it was a little bit of a program that was dependent on the people that were maintaining them too, and as there was some turnover, that became a challenge. So fast forward, and now they actually work with a bike share program, and so they actually have, I think, 5 or 6 hubs around their town where they're docked and secured. There's an app where people can actually rent them for a small fee and locate where they are and things like that. So they've taken some pretty good steps in developing a bike share program. It was interesting to hear some of the feedback on the users. They found that quite a few kids were using them, that maybe come from low-income families where their parents are working throughout the day and they didn't have access to a bike, and so this bike share program provided them a means to get to some of their after-school activities and whatnot. So that was pretty neat to hear. The other thing, maybe a little more specific to Wilmer, they're a pretty big tourism town, and so they actually have a convention and visitors bureau within that city, and working in conjunction with them, they've been able to attract a lot of large-scale bike tours that start and end out of Wilmer. And so that's created a little bit of a buzz within their town. But with them too, they've also partnered on printing some maps. And so out of their bike and pedestrian plan, they essentially developed kind of bike routes. A lot of them are trail, but then within their town, they designated certain city streets as part of street trails. And so those are identified on a nice foldable pocket map that people had access to. So I think it was just a good example in that this is another rural town, pretty similar size to us, where they brought a lot of different people together and, definitely made some significant strides to create a more bike-friendly community there in Wilmer. And we got I think it was a good field trip for us, and now we have that connection going forward that we can continue to reach out and ask questions and things like that. I have recently registered us through the League of American Bicyclists. So that's ultimately the entity that we will submit our application into eventually. With that, I was able to get access to what the application actually entails. So there's a nice handout that previews all of the questions that we'll ultimately need to look into as a committee as we continue to plan in the future. Related to the bicycle-friendly community initiative as well, we put on our first Cycle Chaska community event back on Sunday, September 29th. Unfortunately, we picked a difficult weather day. It was rather cold and raining that day. So the turnout isn't what we had hoped, but the staff that put it together did a wonderful job in pretty short order, putting together a nice rounded event. Our goal was really to try to get a variety of bike users out to Athletic Park as a starting point. We had a nice family-friendly route that was available for parents and kids to go along the Levee Trail over to Lions Park And then over at Lions Park, we've got a rather new mountain bike pump track over there, and the local mountain bike club team was there on hand giving demonstrations on how to utilize the pump track. So that was really neat. And then we also had another volunteer who led a group of riders on a 20-mile out and back road ride as well. And the goal was to have a variety of vendors available. We had a food truck, Shram Brewery was going to be on site. Ideally, it was going to be a beautiful day where families could come out and just have a nice afternoon of playing together. But because of the weather, it didn't quite turn out that way. So we'll look at revisiting that again next year. I think the concept's great. And we learned a lot of things just planning that event and made some good connections within the community. And then lastly, as it relates to the bicycle-friendly community, is just taking our next step as a committee. So we do have a good amount of people that have expressed interest in serving on what we're initially calling an active transportation advisory committee. There's several key staff representing the various departments within the city that are on that, along with probably 10, 12 other various people in the community that represent both the community and businesses in the area as well. And so a recent communication just went out to try to figure out what would be a good meeting time to try to get together. It's looking like sometime later in October or early November, we'll convene for our first official committee meeting and come together and really just start to dive in on what we want to do here in Chaska. We can lean on the initial report that was submitted to us by Bike MN when they had done the assessment last fall. There's a lot of good information in there, a lot of good recommendations for us to work from that cover the 6 different E's that are a part of the application. And so I think just taking a look at that and then getting a feel from the group on how to prioritize what those recommendations are over the next year will be a good step in the right direction for us. The typical application submittals into the League of American Bicyclists are in February and or in August of any given year. So I think we'll want to target that August date of next year and see how much we can accomplish between now and then. Any questions or feedback as it relates to the bicycle-friendly community?
As far as now, Marshall, what do you see as our biggest hurdle? As far as, and is there anything as far as in Wilmer that maybe was a hurdle for them that was able to shed some light on, to kind of ease the process for us?
Yeah, I think probably the most challenging thing is figuring out in-road facilities. It's rather easy to think about new development and new trails because you can just factor that in. But when you start looking, especially at your downtown areas and you've already got existing streets, how does that play into the bikeability of your community and what does that look like? I think can be, and they noted that too. Their former city engineer, who's now their county engineer, really just talked about, you really need to just be realistic about it too. I think the energy of the group is try to get everything bikeable, and that might not be feasible. There's cost to it, there's maintenance to it. So I think what we really need to do is really define what does bikeable really look like here in Chaska, and there's kind of 2 ways of looking at it. It's, recreationally, but then also as a form of transportation. And as we're thinking about transportation, what are the key destinations we're trying to get people to, and what's the infrastructure we can use to get people there. But then with that's gonna come, the education behind it and the enforcement and things like that. And they did say that was a pretty big key factor in some of their, programming, is really creating that education between, drivers and automobiles, and bicyclists, and how are we sharing roads and doing that in a safe manner, so.
Any other comments? I'd say it's encouraging that Wilmer's, invested what they have into getting to where they are and the designation they have, but still have energy to want to try and reach the next level. And, I think that they must really be appreciating the value that they've received from it, reaching that level and what it's done for their community. So, and was it like 2011? Is that when you were saying they started?
That's when they had done a master plan, and then they, I think they got the designation in 2014 or 2015. And then they've held it for 4 years now, and now they're getting ready to submit another application.
Well, it sounds like a worthwhile field trip to be able to try and get what you can and learn, benefit from what they've learned.
Yeah, and they also learned quite a bit too from Hutchinson, Minnesota is another community that's got the designation, and then Fergus Falls is another one that's really creating a lot of momentum. Fergus Falls, actually, they've really created or figured out a good formula on how to get their businesses involved. And so through the League of American Bicyclists, there's another designation that sort of factors into this, which is a bicycle-friendly business. So there's different categories. There's the community, there's the business, there's even a bicycle-friendly university designation, so campuses are looking at it. But, if we can get designated bicycle-friendly businesses within Chaska, that just then helps from the community perspective as well. And so I think Fergus Falls actually holds the record of the most businesses per capita of any bicycle-friendly community in the nation. Granted, they're a smaller community, but they've got almost a good majority of their businesses really involved in it, which is pretty cool. So I think it's another example that we can lean on over time. All right.
Any other comments? If not, and if you want to move on to item 6B, mountain bike trail update.
All right. So I thought I'd pull the map up again for us. This is a reference of where this site is. So from the last time we met to today, we've actually have seen some pretty good progress with this project. So happy to share that we've received the executed limited use permit from MnDOT. Once we received that, our next order of business with MnDOT was to submit a work permit to actually be able to do the work on the site. So we submitted that right away and literally just got that back last week. So as it pertains to what we needed to accomplish with MnDOT, that's all complete. And just to revisit that, as we look at this site, MnDOT owns essentially this area here that I'm outlining with the mouse. And so we've been permitted to factor in trails within this area. Same thing along this northern side of 212 over here, south of the school campus. As you recall, there is a section on the eastern side of this site where we were informed by MnDOT that they had turned that over to the Carver County a while back. And so we had been working with Carver County throughout last year. The determination with that was it was in their best interest to convey this over to Chanhassen since this section of the area actually falls within the city limits of Chanhassen. And so there was some work that needed to be done, but that's now been legally conveyed over to Chanhassen. And there's actually some right-of-way too within Chaska that got legally conveyed over to us as well. Just because the county still wants to maintain an easement as it relates to some of the right-of-way along the road. So they got to make sure that they're accounting for future utilities if ever needed. They also want to factor in proper drainage coming off of the road and into some of these wetlands. So we actually have a meeting tomorrow set up with the respective attorneys from all three entities to just review the legal conveyance and the easements and better understand those. And so once we get that factored in, the city of Chanhassen, through their city council, will ultimately accept that conveyance, and then they know that there's the intent to have mountain bike trails here. So we've already got a three-way memorandum of understanding prepared that would be between the city of Chaska, the city of Chanhassen, and then the Carver Trails Mountain Bike Group. And then also the volunteer waiver and just the legalities within that. So their city council will review that, and we should be in a position, hopefully in the near future, to move this project another step forward. So ideally, the hope is we can work with Carver Trails to at least get out there even yet this year, weather permitting, and lay out where the trails will go. And then that'll give them a head start going into next spring to then start construction on the trails.
Is there a completion date that you guys are targeting?
We're targeting fall of next year. I think until they get on the site and, you know, they probably really haven't been able to gain necessarily commitment from their volunteer base until we know this gets approved. So I think there's this combination of how many volunteers are going to commit to helping build the trails, and then the weather. We just don't know if weather anymore seems to be such a hurdle.
Sure.
But I know they're excited, and once the weather does cooperate next spring, they'll be on there building those trails.
I just want to commend you and the folks on the community side of the bikes. This seemed like a rather obvious thing, a piece of land to be used by people that bike with no other economic value.
Mm-hmm.
And the best estimate, 127 hands have touched this over the course of 6 or 7 months. So your stay-to-itness to make this what it is, I just think it needs to go noted that it just seems like there's ridiculous layers, but you've stuck with it. I think it's going to be a great community asset.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, projects are always a little more difficult when you have more agencies involved, but it's been a good learning opportunity, and, you know, I think the more the agencies have gotten involved, they too are getting excited behind the project, and so I agree. I think it's going to be a nice asset to the community. There'll be this kind of this perfect size system for the local mountain bike club team, and those in the community that are just beginners that want to try mountain biking. Now, this is going to be a rather you know, from basic to maybe intermediate course. You know, this site doesn't have major elevation or anything, so it just lends itself to a nice entry-level course here in Chaska. So, then the other great thing related to this that came about too, that sort of falls into the bicycle-friendly community update too, that I want to make sure I mention and recognize. Shields of Eden Prairie actually donated a bike fix-it station. And so it's my understanding that one of their staff has some involvement with the local mountain bike club team and was able to advocate on our behalf to donate a bike fix-it station. And so we received that about a week ago, and working with Public Works on where we might want to install that within our community. So
That's really good news, isn't it?
yeah.
That's really good.
All right, Marshall, any other questions for Marshall related to the mountain bike trail update? All right, hearing none, if you want to go ahead and move on to item 6C for the trail wayfinding pilot project update.
All right. So we got another visual for you. I'm guessing maybe some of you have seen some of these around town. And so this is an example of some of the signage that's been installed throughout the community. This specific one here is right outside of the Curling and Event Center, looking east towards Highway 41. And so you can see that you can continue straight to stay on the orange loop, or you can hang a left to go on the green line. And so to put this in perspective, got another map to showcase kind of a system map, so to speak. This is still being a little more enhanced, but for the most part, it showcases where the green line is. So this, zoom in a little bit here. So the green line essentially starts or ends in downtown Carver area. And the goal of this green line was to connect the three downtowns of Carver, Chaska, and then on up to Victoria. And so it's essentially a linear trail out and back. It's about 9 miles long each way. Nice scenic route that gets people connected between the downtowns, and also this pink is highlighting the regional trails. So one of the goals going into this is, again, it's another partnership with Carver County, along with the city of Victoria. And really what we wanted to be mindful of is, sort of this intersection between regional trails and local municipal trails, and then also how we're going, from one city to another, and where there's some of those connections. Because in the end, really, the user just wants to know how to get somewhere. They don't really necessarily care who owns the trail, so to speak. And so we were pretty intentful in trying to design a pilot where we're intersecting a variety of trails. And so that green line is the linear trail, and then the other one would be what's called the orange loop. And so that is a loop trail factoring in downtown Chaska. And so this loop trail, if you follow the orange loop, is about 5 miles and 3/4, if you were to go all the way around it. It's a really neat trail. It brings you through Lions Park, and then you come back down along the levee trail system, and then you head over to Athletic Park, and then you come back around, and you get that downtown experience. So, and then actually as you come in past downtown, within this section, you go in through a really neat wooded section. So it's pretty cool. You can go like from downtown to middle of the woods. You feel like you're somewhere up north within a matter of a mile. So that's a really neat trail. So the signage throughout these green line and orange loop are up. There's some areas where we've also got painted markings on the trail. And Carver County is actually positioning this pilot project to conduct a research study as well. So they've contracted with WSB Consulting Group, and they're seeking feedback in a few different ways, actually. They've got some of their staff that have been out on the trails, and they're actually intercepting people as they go by to ask them some questions and get some feedback. They've met with a variety of groups in both Chaska and Victoria. I know last week they actually met with some of the active older adults at the lodge up at the community center to get their feedback. I believe this week they're actually meeting with some of the residents over at Riverview Terrace to get some of their feedback, and along with a few others. And then lastly, they've got an online survey. And so respective cities have been pushing that out through websites and social media to drive people to that survey and get feedback. And so the whole idea is to get a better understanding of people's perception on the effectiveness of the signage, whether or not it factors in their usage of the trails, along with just some other general questions about demographics and trail use. And the goal will be to then take that information and it'll help inform us as we think about a more system-wide trail wayfinding plan here in Chaska. So I encourage you, I know, again, weather is up against us as we approach a winter here, but if you get a chance, I really encourage you to go out and explore these two trail systems and take that survey yourself as well.
And again, Marshall, where would we access the survey?
So you can get it off of, I believe, the community center webpage. We have a link to it, and then I know that the Chaska Communications Department should be putting it out on the Facebook, and then our community center Facebook site also has a link. But I can also send an email directly to the park board too, so you guys have access to the survey. Yep.
All right, any questions for Marshall related to the wayfinding pilot project? All right, hearing none, we're going to go ahead and move on to item number 7, so you can take a little break
All right.
before we call you back. And that is to receive council and planning meeting minutes, and we've got a bunch of them here. We've got July 15th council, August 5th council, August 19th council, September 16th council, September 30th council, and then planning commission meeting minutes from June 12th and August 14th. And was there any discussion items that surfaced while you were reviewing those minutes?
I had a couple of comments on them.
Mm-hmm.
On the July 15th, Marshall and Anna Mason made a presentation to the council. I looked at it on the video, after I saw it was on there. And I thought it was really well done, and hopefully maybe you can give us an update if there's been any progress on that a little bit later on. But it was, it was well received, it was well presented, it, had some good information, I thought. I was pleased to see on August 19th that the council adopted the naming policy for us. And also I thought it was really interesting, the presentation that was made by Learning Links on September 16th, and that the council moved to approve a letter of intent to move forward with the further planning of the change in the PAR 30. So that sounded really positive too. That was the only comments I had, and they were all pretty positive comments.
Yeah, very much so. All right, thank you. Commissioner Downs, any other comments that from those? All right, well, there's no motion required. That is just to receive those minutes. So let's get back to our agenda. That moves us on to item number 8, other business. 8A being staff reports.
All right, so I'll just go ahead and go through as usual. I like to highlight some of the activities occurring within our department and recognize all of this wonderful work our staff puts into it. So to pull a few things out, looking back, some of you may have seen our recreation staff are putting out a new electronic news piece that's coming out about monthly, and that's going out to current community center members, and then there's also a link at the bottom of our community center website for people to opt in to receive that going forward. But they're doing a great job of just highlighting, 3-4 things going on within the recreation department that we think people would be interested in. So just another way to get information out to the community. Active older adults have been having some good field trips in the past here. So they recently combined with the seniors over in Chanhassen and took a overnight trip down to Ames, Iowa, and had a good time there. They also had Active Aging Week, September 30th through October 4th. The theme was a wild theme, so they did a lot of safari-themed activities throughout the week. And as you can see there's probably close to 350 participants throughout all the different activities. So great to see that that activity throughout that week. Over at the Curling and Event Center, Winter League registration took place, and we've got 231 teams registered for the Winter League 1. So that entails 920 games that have been scheduled across 15 leagues. So that's quite a bit of coordination that staff need to do to build out essentially all those games and leagues. And it just demonstrates how awesome of a facility that is, and just how much the community is enjoying curling there. I think our capacity is about 240 teams, so we're pretty darn close to capacity there throughout the winter. Also happy to report the junior curling registration. It reached capacity as well. There's over 50 kids registered through the junior curling program. And then in addition, there's also a new high school club curling team that's formed. So we had a group of passionate dads that wanted to volunteer and create a club sport in conjunction with our facility to be able to offer curling as a club team through the high school. And it's actually allows for kids even from other high schools in the area to participate as well. But they've worked with the Chaska High School specifically, in which these kids can actually earn a letter by participating through this club team. And so that's just launching. There's 11 kids that have registered, and so there's 8 kids on varsity and 3 on JV. And so we're really, really excited about that. Knowing that we've got a strong juniors program, and now this is going to give them something to aim for that's maybe a little bit more competitive when they get to that JV and varsity level. And then the thought is to start creating opportunities where they can go around to other clubs and compete against other club high school teams in the state and or region. Let's see here. Back in September, on Saturday, September 7th, we did a kind of a trial version of Park Run. And so this is a community-based free 5K that's timed on a weekly basis. It's actually an international organization, so there's park runs all over the world. It actually started over in Europe and has worked its way over to the U.S. Rather recently. Currently, there is one other park run site over in Eagan, Minnesota. And so one of the individuals there who actually came before the park board earlier in the year has helped try to get us to a point where we can offer this here in Chaska. And so we just did a trial run to get the community out and experience it. We had, I think, over 50 people participate, and I think it was a really good representation of what Park Run is trying to accomplish, and that it's really meant for people of all abilities, all ages. There were several parents there with their kids in the stroller. There were several people that came with their dog and leash, just come together. And what was really cool is even for the first run, the first finishers came back to the finish line and were cheering everybody else as they were coming across the finish. So out of that, our next step is we still do need to identify some volunteers that really want to lead this. We did have a sign-up sheet. I think there were a few people that indicated that they'd be willing to volunteer. And so we'll continue to work with them and see whoever else would like to take that on. Because it is intended to be a volunteer-based community program.
Marshall, is that something that the course will change every run?
No, the intent is actually to run on the same course. So they actually come out and certify it. And then ideally participants, it kind of creates some certainty, but then also you can track your time over time. So I mean, even though it's not competitive, some people do like to see their progress over time. And so currently the trail we ended up using, we started at a trailhead located along the Levee Trail by the river over by the Carver County Government Center. And then we essentially ran east and then did an out and back. So it worked out good. It was a good 5K route. Really scenic. There was, views of the river and, lots of nice trees along the way. So I think it had a good vibe to it, so to speak, from a participant perspective. Let's see here. Some other things to note, looking ahead, it is October, so it is Halloween season. This Friday, be sure to check out Trail of Fun over at Athletic Park. That's going to be occurring from 5 to 8:30, and that is a community event that we partner with Carver County on. Lots of great family activities there. There is a fee. It is $1 per person for admission. But get out, experience a lot of good activities, meet your neighbors, and get out on that hay wagon. And get there early because the line forms pretty quick. It's a fun thing to do. In conjunction with that, we also have the pumpkin carving contest going on. And so that actually, the pumpkins get on display out at the Trail of Fun community event. There is a note here that staff would love for Park Board to carve a few of these pumpkins. And so if there's an interest in that, we can get you set up to do that this week. And then looking ahead a little bit later in the month, over at the community center, we have a Halloween live event. That is going to take place on Saturday, October 26th, from 4 to 6 p.m. And again, just a lot of great family fun activities there for people to enjoy. And then lastly, would like to make mention over at the Chaska Community Center, we're going to be doing remodeling enhancement down in the lower level. those of you that are familiar, there's an area where there's some strength equipment that's, I believe, original equipment to the building, so it is time for an upgrade there. And so we're looking at creating a more functional fitness space within that area, try to open it up. In addition, we're working on updating some of the policies over at the community center, one of which we're looking at lowering the age in which people can utilize the fitness center. And I know that one of the park board members had inquired about that recently. So currently the age is 15 years of age to utilize the fitness center. We're looking to bring that down to 12 years of age, which is actually consistent with a lot of other facilities in the fitness industry. We really think that can actually promote retention amongst our family memberships. So as families get memberships and their kids are utilizing the pools and whatnot at a younger age, I think we got a little bit of a gap in that 12 to 15 where they're not able to utilize the fitness center, and maybe some of the other amenities just aren't as attractive as a middle schooler, so to speak. And so we really think this fitness center, reducing that age, can really bridge that gap and keep our family members at the community center. So hopefully that is actually gonna be completed yet by the end of this year. That is all I have.
All right, well, that is plenty. And so, 8B, did we already kind of cruise into 8B, other reports? You don't
Yes,
have
I think-
anything under that list?
Yep.
All right, so then what we'll do is just move on to kind of our round table here.
Can I
And
ask one question, Marshall?
You may.
Yeah.
I know the event center is utilized heavily for weddings. Are you getting a lot of bookings for other activities as well?
Yeah, we're starting to get more corporate business events. We're really figuring out how to package the event center with a lot of our even corporate curling events that take place. We're seeing it used for some like nonprofit community events as well. I know like even this coming Wednesday, the Chaska Area Fishing with Friends is
Yeah.
hosting their kind of end of season dinner and program highlighting their success from the year. So yeah, it's getting a lot of good variety.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right, excellent. Ernesto, Commissioner Gutierrez, any comments?
No.
No? Commissioner Whitrock?
I have a few.
Okay.
I was on vacation and I didn't watch any TV, so I had time to think a little bit. Has any thought been given to the community center staff wearing lanyards to identify who is the staff? Everything's getting bigger and busier and new people and, just to ask a question too. But another thing that I think is real important is we've had some medical emergencies, and with the AOA population is getting bigger and bigger, you're going to expect more of those. And I have a little concern that somebody who's not on the staff is going to try to help somebody before a staff member gets there. And, maybe I'm worrying for nothing, but the liability factor there, because there have been some things that have happened, and, luckily someone has been around or come to the rescue, but I have a friend who fell and didn't realize she had a concussion, and, it's, AOAs some of them are there just about all day. They exercise in the morning, they have coffee, they might go somewhere else for lunch, they play cards all afternoon. So it's really utilized heavy. That's just an idea.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's come up for discussion before.
Not that I'm aware of, but I mean, that's good feedback for us to look into. I think just in general, identifying our staff is a good thing from a customer service perspective. I know we're pretty well covered throughout the building, so I feel like our response time in situations where people need help is really good, but we also want to lean on the people that are in the building too. You know, if there's people that have the expertise and knowledge to assist before we can get there, you know, that might actually be critical, you know, in helping save a life too. So I don't know if we would want to necessarily discourage that.
No, I don't think you want to discourage it, but there's always the chance somebody might try to help who doesn't have the expertise.
Yeah. Yeah, I think though that they would be, there's the Good Samaritan law that covers people in that situation as long as they're acting, you know, out of care to help somebody. But I think if there's a situation where they can bridge some of that care and activate, especially in a situation where we need to call 911 right away, the sooner the better. And then, you know, our staff will then follow up and hop right in to assist with whatever the situation may be.
And I know lanyards are kind of a pain, but I wore one for many years.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple other things, since I'm an AOA'er, the size of the silver sneakers in yoga classes, the limit is now 40. And, you know, it's just so popular. And I'm not saying they have 40 in every class, but it gets pretty tight there if you're exercising and you're hitting someone else. And sometimes I think there might be a brawl over getting in shape. People get there pretty early to get their spot.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, one of my friends said the situation, she got into yoga a little later, but it was still under the 40 limit. And she went by one lady and she said, that's not going to work. You have to move. So what I've been told is a couple issues. It's hard to get instructors, which could very well be true. And there's limited space or rooms to offer more classes. So, you know, I didn't talk to Missy Goff, I think she's in charge of the whole operation. I didn't talk to her about it, but some of the AOAs are wondering if there could be more sections or more classes, just a little more flexibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's good feedback, and, you know, we should be continually assessing, you know, the use within our classes, and then also what are the available spaces. You know, oftentimes people want to exercise at a specific time of day, so then it's, if we're in a situation where we're hosting multiple classes at the same time, then it obviously requires us to get creative with other spaces to host those classes.
And some of the people are choosing to use the machines, which is good, or walk the track, or a couple have even hired personal trainers, but most can't afford to do that.
I think another opportunity into the future too would be, how do we take the programming outside of the community center and maybe partner with some of the senior housing facilities that might have a common community room within their facility as well. So
That's an excellent idea.
mm-hmm.
Let's see. One other thing, Marshall, this is a good thing. A lot of the people in the lodge don't know you. And they would like to, you know, because we're getting new people all the time, and they would like to get to know you. So I was wondering if we could do some kind of Marshall meet and greet.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I haven't mentioned it to Karen yet, but I think we'd draw a crowd.
I'd be happy to do that.
Of course, they'd all have pitchforks and torches.
Well, I can talk to Karen too, and Joan, we can kind of coordinate it with them.
Yep. Yeah, that'd be fun.
And then my last one, and then I'll shut up. I ran into the director of Breakaway Academy, Mr. Snuggerud. It's Dave Snuggerud.
Mm-hmm.
I asked him how things are going. He said really, really well. They have 100 students. They're very happy with the facility, and he was very, very positive. And he's a real positive guy. Former science teacher and hockey coach at Chaska, and middle school teacher, so he knows how to handle things.
Mm-hmm.
But that was good news, I thought.
yeah, they're a great partner within our facility, and it's a win-win partnership there, you know, in that you know, they're able to provide a great experience to their students, you know, while at the same time, from a facility use standpoint, you know, our ice arenas are being used during the week and during the day, you know, where oftentimes those can be hard to fill. So it's a great partnership over at the community center. And yeah, they're growing too. So I think Mr. Snuggerud said that this last NFL or NHL draft, there were some of their students, so they're kind of at that point now where some of the kids that have gone through their system and have now graduated, some of them got drafted into the NHL. So they're really able to point to the success of their program now to continually recruit people into their academy. It's great. People are starting to come from all over the country
Oh, I didn't know
to
that.
actually sign their kids up for their academy.
Okay. I'm done.
Okay. Commissioner Kim?
There have been a lot of good things going on in the community, I've heard. But one thing specifically happened a little over a week ago. It was the Chaska High School homecoming parade in downtown Chaska. And I was there, and student council helped organize it, the Chaska High School Student Council. And there was a lot of community involvement with that project, and it was just really nice to see people out and about in the streets. And it was crowded, man. There were a lot of people there, and it was just a good, fun time. And I don't know, it's just good to see the high school and the community working together to really put together projects that people can attend.
Commissioner Downs?
My grandson went to the pump track with his dad, and they had a great time. They were actually looking for a pump track, and they didn't know that one existed, and they were looking at going out to Blaine or someplace, and somehow came across that thing, and they really thought it was pretty cool. Which brings the point, I guess, is have we done anything to notify people of that pump track availability and that it is a cool place and what it means and all that stuff?
We probably could position it better. I think it's one of those where, you know, the mountain bike club team knows about it and, you know, sort of word of mouth, but, you know, figuring out how we can identify it, like on Google Maps or something like that, I think would be good to help promote that it's there.
Even figure out a way to give it a little press time, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You could let people know that it was really good and that you could probably get some very positive reviews in the thing.
Yeah. Might be one of those updates that the recreation staff puts out would be a neat thing to highlight.
Yeah. That's it.
All right, Commissioner Branch?
I'll just take the opportunity to express my love for the fantastic city of Chaska, and that will be all for me today.
All right, Commissioner Uderman?
A brief recognition for former Mayor Doc Ziegler and his passing. I know he was really instrumental in the Jonathan area where there's a lot of trails, and sometimes we take that for granted and what it means to the overall trail and park system in Chaska. Second of all, August, Park Board meeting saw 133 views online. So a little call out to the guy in the back. We don't always see a lot of visitors here, but there are people watching it. And I bumped into somebody socially. So a call out to Dr. Sutcliffe, sorry. He's one of the viewers, which I thought it was odd because I was out socially and he was talking about Park Board and he knew what was going on. And I sometimes don't remember there was 133 people that viewed our last meeting. So I thought that was cool.
But are we beating city council?
No, city council's at 165, but they've had some interesting things pop up in city council, so we're climbing up.
Climbing up.
133. Third thing is athletic park. I'll just echo what a great event that is on Friday, coming up on Friday. And we've gone in years past and there hasn't been a cost, and I always said, why don't they charge something? So I think it's fiscally responsible to charge the $1. And I think the attendance actually rivals that of Touch-A-Truck. So it's an amazing event for our family. And then the fourth thing is, we've talked a lot about biking and Wayfair and cycling. I had the opportunity to go to a Southwest Chamber Manufacturing Symposium a couple weeks ago. And a lot of the conversation was about the last mile, is getting Southwest Transit or other transportation to get people that are working in the manufacturing field, particularly the PLAZA, Lyman Boulevard area. And a lot of conversation is about how do you get that last mile? So from drop off at a bus stop to into the manufacturing spot. And so the work that is being done with the trails and the Wayfair, I think that's one of the solutions. I don't know how that plays out in the winter, but we had some really good dialogue at that symposium about what that last mile looks like by way of alternate forms of transportation and expanding this area economically by way of our great assets in Park and Rec. So I wanted to mention that. And then the last one is first-time basketball coach. My wife will be starting coaching the Pee Wee League. Coaches are needed. She stepped forward to do so. So I think it's October 26th, the Little might start. And we were thought it was pretty encouraging that she'll be playing in Carver. I think they're utilizing some gym space in Carver to make that happen. But kudos to all the people that are volunteering to do the coaching, which is above and beyond. And then also maybe a heads up to the folks that haven't volunteered to maybe just let the coaches coach. That's all I got.
All right, Commissioner Wayfinding.
I have nothing to add this week.
Okay. So, just one thing, when you mentioned the Halloween event coming up at the Chaska Community Center, it took me back to the days when my kids were young, and they've continued to have that. I believe you said it was Saturday, is that October 26th? Is that when that fell?
Yep.
I don't have my calendar up here, but at any rate, for anybody out there with young kids, I encourage you to take full advantage of that Halloween event, and it's a lot of fun. The kids have a great time, and you never know what you're going to get come Halloween weather-wise, and so at least you can count on that. It's indoors, and it's the kids can wear their costumes, and hats off to staff that always puts on a real good party for the kids for that. And should I mention that Dunkin' Donuts open?
It is? What?
Somebody had to. All right, that's all I've got. So with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, Uterman.
Second.
Second from Kim. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.